reminding herself why the credential mattered. Furtive. Adjective. Trying to avoid being noticed, often in a suspicious way. He gave a furtive glance toward the door each time it opened, as if expecting someone to interrupt the conversation that had grown too personal to be public. Conundrum. Noun. A difficult problem that is hard to solve. It was a conundrum for the editor. Keep the controversial passage for honesty, or cut it and risk turning a complicated story into something neatly dishonest. Oblique. Adjective. Slanting, not straight or direct. He took an oblique path through the pasture to skirt the thickest mud. Provisional. Adjective. Temporary until firmer facts arrive. They set a provisional meeting time, knowing the ferry schedule might change with the fog. Incessant. Adjective. Continuing without stopping. The incessant buzzing of the streetlight drew moths in a swirling cloud, and the quiet porch became an unexpected theater of wings and shadows. Desiccate. Verb. To dry something out fully. Sun and wind desiccated the herbs on the rack until they crumbled between her fingers. Yield. Verb. To produce a result or to give way. The old tree yielded apples in autumn, then yielded to the saw when it rotted. Endorse. Verb. To publicly support or approve something. The committee agreed to endorse the initiative only after safeguards were added, because they did not want to appear careless about privacy. Pervasive. Adjective. Spread widely through an area or group. The pervasive sense of uncertainty in the office lifted only after leadership explained the reorganization and answered questions without dodging them. Pernicious. Adjective. Harmful in a way that slowly causes damage. A pernicious rumor spread through the staff lounge, and within days it had strained friendships that had held together through far worse pressures. Dearth. Noun. Too little of something, scarcity. After the wet winter there was a dearth of dry firewood, so they burned the stove sparingly. Tangible. Adjective. Clear and real enough to be noticed or measured. After weeks of fog and rumor, the first tangible sign of spring was the smell of thawed earth along the hedgerow and thumbprints of green in the furrows. Benchmark. Noun. A fixed reference you measure other things against. They used last summer's harvest as a benchmark and tried to beat it without watering more. Presume. Verb. To take something as true before you know for sure. Do not presume the lost dog is stray. Check the collar before you decide. Undermine. Verb. To weaken something, often gradually and indirectly. Small inconsistencies began to undermine confidence in the project, until the team clarified ownership and corrected the recurring communication gaps. Diplomatic. Adjective. Tactful, skilled at sparing others' pride. His diplomatic jokes softened the refusal, and nobody left the table feeling slighted. Ambivalent. Adjective. Having mixed feelings about something. She felt ambivalent about moving, excited by the new job but uneasy about leaving the neighborhood where she had built a steady routine. Aloof. Adjective. Cool and distant, hard to draw in. The stray cat stayed aloof on the fence, watching the porch until Trust earned a saucer of milk. Pragmatic. Adjective. guided by practical considerations rather than ideals. He took a pragmatic approach to the budget, choosing improvements that reduced complaints quickly instead of chasing a perfect solution that would take months. Compromise. Noun. An agreement where each side gives up something. The final schedule was a compromise, preserving the critical milestones while trimming the extras that had been inflating the workload. Prevalent. Adjective. Common in a particular place or among a group. Remote work was prevalent in their industry long before it became fashionable, largely because the talent pool was spread across cities. Obsequious. Adjective. Eager to obey or please someone in a way that feels excessive and insincere. The obsequious waiter hovered after every bite, praising choices they had not tasted, until the couple asked for a quieter corner table. Untenable. Adjective. Unable to be defended or maintained. Once the receipts were tallied, the expense pattern became untenable, and the board demanded tighter controls before approving another round of travel. Erratic. Adjective. Uneven, hard to predict. The kite flew in an erratic path when the gusts hit. Meticulous. Adjective. Showing great attention to detail. Her meticulous notes from the interview helped the article avoid errors, especially when the facts became complicated and easy to misstate. Wary. Adjective. Cautious because you sense a possible problem. She was wary of committing to the vendor after the vague demo, so she requested a pilot with clear success criteria and a written exit option. Subtle. Adjective. Not obvious and requiring attention to notice. The message carried a subtle warning, delivered with polite language that still left no doubt about the consequences. Vigilant. Adjective. Carefully watching for problems or danger. During the outage, the on-call engineer stayed vigilant, tracking new alerts and confirming each fix before declaring the system stable again. Invective. Noun. Bitter, insulting language aimed at someone. The online thread turned to pure invective, so she logged off and walked the dog. Volatile. Adjective. Prone to sudden shifts, unstable or explosive. The sea turned volatile at dusk, green waves slapping the pier until every line sang with strain. Impeccable. Adjective. Without mistakes or faults. Her impeccable timing during the debate kept the discussion focused, even when the audience tried to steer it toward side arguments. Cacophony. Noun. A harsh mixture of loud sounds. A cacophony rose from the street festival, drums, whistles, and shouted orders until the band found a shared rhythm and the noise turned into music. Discreet. Adjective. Careful to avoid drawing attention or causing embarrassment. He offered discreet help by sliding the dropped keys back with his foot, so no one had to stop and stare while she recovered. Euphoria. Noun. A powerful feeling of happiness and excitement. A wave of euphoria swept the backstage crew when the final curtain fell, and they hugged in the dim corridor while applause thundered through the walls. Assertive. Adjective. Confidently direct, without being aggressive. She was assertive in the negotiation, naming her requirements calmly and refusing to fill the silence when the other side tried to stall. Relentless. Adjective. Never stopping or slowing. The river was relentless against the rocks, wearing them smooth over years. Ponderous. Adjective. Slow and heavy, often in a way that feels awkward. The ponderous old door groaned on its hinges, and each time it closed the draft carried the smell of rain and wet wool from the vestibule. Nuance. Noun. A subtle difference that changes how something is understood. In the meeting, she clarified the nuance between delaying the launch and pausing it entirely because the distinction shaped how the team communicated with customers. Adhere. Verb. To stick to a rule, plan, or surface. If you adhere to the marked trail, you stay above the cliff edge. Disparate. Adjective. So different in kind that they are hard to compare or unite. The committee blended disparate traditions into one festival, pairing brass bands with quiet tea ceremonies and hoping the schedule would not feel like two unrelated events. Diligent. Adjective. Careful and persistent in completing work. His diligent preparation showed up in the small details, from confirming time zones to bringing printed copies for people who preferred them. Strident. Adjective. Loud and forceful in a way that can feel aggressive. His strident laugh carried across the marina, startling gulls from the pilings and drawing sideways glances along the dock. Inure. Verb. To make someone accustomed to something unpleasant. Years of night shifts had inured her to sirens and fluorescent light, yet she still paused to watch the sunrise when she finally stepped outside. Diminish. Verb. To shrink or weaken something. Fog did not diminish the lighthouse beam, but it scattered the light into a pale bloom. Equitable. Adjective. Fair and impartial in the way people are treated. The manager worked toward an equitable schedule, considering caregiving responsibilities and commute times rather than rewarding whoever complained loudest. Assiduous. Adjective. Working persistently and carefully over time. The violin maker was assiduous with varnish, building thin layers until the maple seemed to glow from somewhere beneath the surface. Unequivocal. Adjective. Leaving no doubt, completely clear. The lab issued an unequivocal warning about the water source, and within hours the town posted signs and opened distribution points for sealed bottles. Arduous. Adjective. Requiring great effort over a long period. Training for the mountain trek was arduous, with early mornings, heavy packs, and steady progress that rarely felt dramatic. Egregious. Adjective. Very bad in a way that is hard to miss. Pouring salt instead of sugar was an egregious error, and the cookies went straight to the bin. Apathy. Noun. Lack of interest or concern. The greatest obstacle was not anger but apathy, so the organizers told specific stories, knocked on doors, and made the stakes feel immediate and local. Preempt. Verb. To act before something happens in order to prevent it. To preempt confusion on opening night, they posted clear signs, assigned ushers to each doorway, and walked through the line from the perspective of a first-time visitor. Emerge. Verb. To become visible or known as a result of change or time. Over weeks of small experiments, a better strategy began to emerge, shaped by what customers actually did rather than what they claimed they wanted. Antipathy. Noun. A strong dislike. She nursed a quiet antipathy toward the noisy generator, even though it kept the cabin lights on. Exonerate. Verb. To declare officially that someone is not guilty or not responsible for blame. Fresh physical evidence helped exonerate the man who had spent years under suspicion, and the courthouse steps filled with reporters and relieved relatives. Forthright. Adjective. Plain-spoken, direct without disguise. She was forthright. She did not know the trail, and she would not pretend otherwise. Commence. Verb. To begin something in an official or deliberate way. The music teacher waited until the hall quieted, then tapped her baton, and the spring concert commenced with a chord that settled like dust motes in the light. Perfunctory. Adjective. Done with minimum effort or interest as a routine duty. He gave a perfunctory nod at the safety briefing, eyes on his phone, and later missed the step that would have prevented the spill. Gregarious. Adjective. Sociable, happiest in lively company. At the harvest feast he was gregarious, moving from table to table with stories and laughter. Deliberate. Adjective. Done intentionally and with careful thought. His deliberate pacing made the workshop feel calm, and participants had time to reflect instead of rushing from slide to slide. Convey. Verb. To communicate an idea or feeling successfully. Her tone conveyed urgency without panic, which helped the group take the issue seriously and still think clearly. Pertinent. Adjective. Directly related to what is being discussed. She asked one pertinent question about the recipe, and the whole bread rose better. Assuage. Verb. To make pain, hunger, or worry milder. Tea and honey helped assuage her sore throat after the long walk in the cold. Burnish. Verb. To polish a surface, to improve how something is seen. She burnished the brass until small discs of light slid along the shelf. Admonish. Verb. To warn firmly because someone did wrong. She admonished the puppy softly when it dug under the fence toward the chickens. Limpid. Adjective. Clear and transparent, simple and clean. Near the bank, the water was limpid, and painted stones lay sharp on the bottom. Paucity. Noun. An amount that is smaller than needed, scarcity. The paucity of bilingual staff meant callers waited longer during emergencies, and the city began funding certification courses with clearer urgency. Epitome. Noun. A perfect, typical example of a kind. The kid in boots and mud was the epitome of spring on the farm lane. Extol. Verb. To praise something enthusiastically and often publicly. Local papers extolled the bakery's rye as the best in the county, and weekend visitors lined up while steam fogged the windows before dawn. Prominent. Adjective. Easy to notice or important in a situation. A prominent scar on the old table reminded her of the first clumsy move into the apartment when friends laughed, lifted together, and made the place feel like home. Fledgling. Adjective. New and still developing. The fledgling theater company rehearsed in a drafty warehouse, borrowing costumes and building sets from scrap, but their opening night carried real promise. Superfluous. Adjective. Extra. Safe to remove without loss. She trimmed the superfluous ribbons from the bouquet so the flowers themselves could speak. Connive. Verb. To allow wrongdoing quietly, or to cooperate with it in secret. The older cousins connived at the younger ones, sneaking pie before dinner. Stipulate. Verb. To state a clear condition in an agreement. The lease stipulated quiet hours after 10 on weeknights. Calibrate. Verb. To adjust carefully for accuracy. She calibrated the scale with a known weight before she baked. Elucidate. Verb. To explain something clearly so it becomes easier to understand. During the budget hearing, the treasurer elucidated how the maintenance fund interacted with reserves, using plain charts until even the skeptical homeowners nodded. Clandestine. Adjective. Kept secret, often to avoid detection. They held a clandestine rehearsal in the back room. Lights dimmed and windows covered because the surprise performance depended on no one leaking the plan. Converge. Verb. To move toward the same point and meet. 3 paths converge at the old oak, where hikers rest in its shade. Nascent. Adjective. Just beginning to develop and not yet fully formed. The nascent neighborhood association met in a borrowed classroom, passing a hat for flyers and arguing politely about whether potlucks counted as outreach. Savor. Verb. To enjoy something slowly and fully. He tried to savor the last minutes of quiet in the cafe, letting the bitter coffee and soft rain at the window stretch time before the day demanded decisions. Compel. Verb. To force or push someone to act. The cry from the alley compelled her to stop and look. Tangential. Adjective. Only loosely connected to the main thread. His tangential tale of a ferry ride entertained us, but it never touched the recipe we were writing down. Replete. Adjective. Fully supplied or filled. By the end of the harvest dinner, the long table was replete with empty platters, sticky plates, and satisfied conversations that drifted like smoke toward the rafters. Tentative. Adjective. Hesitant, not yet fixed or final. She took a tentative step onto the frozen brook, listening for the thin crack under the snow. Inhibit. Verb. To prevent or slow down a process or action. The cold snap inhibited the buds. For a week the branches stayed bare and taut, as if the orchard were holding its breath. Conflate. Verb. To combine 2 different ideas or facts as if they were the same. It is easy to conflate confidence with accuracy, assuming louder voices must know more, when careful listeners often track nuance the crowd misses. Refute. Verb. To prove that a claim is wrong. The analyst refuted the rumor with transaction records, and the conversation shifted from speculation to accountability. Erode. Verb. To wear away bit by bit. Waves eroded the chalk cliffs until the path above grew narrow. Refrain. Verb. To hold back from doing something. He refrained from checking his phone until the movie ended. Sustain. Verb. To keep something going over time. To sustain momentum after the launch, they scheduled regular check-ins and tracked a few meaningful metrics instead of chasing every number. Resonate. Verb. To have a particular meaning or emotional effect for someone. The old hymn resonated with her in the stone church, each verse echoing a half-step laid off the walls until the sound seemed layered and deep. Fetter. Verb. To restrain someone or something, as with chains. Debt fettered their travel plans, so the overseas trip waited one more year. Sober. Adjective. Serious and calm, not playful. After the near miss on the ice, the mood in the car stayed sober. Anecdote. Noun. A brief story that illustrates a point. She opened with an anecdote about losing a boot in a stream, and suddenly the safety rules felt memorable. Overlook. Verb. To fail to notice something important. It was easy to overlook the minor warning sign, but later they realized it was the first clue that the supplier was struggling. Unfettered. Adjective. Not restricted or held back. Unfettered by the usual deadlines, the designer explored ideas slowly, pinning sketches to the wall until a coherent theme emerged on its own. Spurious. Adjective. False or fake, though presented as genuine. The article relied on spurious statistics copied from an outdated blog, and readers who checked the sources found mismatched years and missing sample sizes. Foster. Verb. To encourage the growth or development of something. They tried to foster trust by sharing decisions early, admitting uncertainty, and following up when they said they would. Prolong. Verb. To make something last longer than it otherwise would. They did not want to prolong the argument on the porch, so they agreed to walk the loop trail and finish the talk where the wind carried voices away. Salient. Adjective. Most noticeable or important in a situation. The most salient issue was not the new feature list, but the rising support backlog that threatened to erode trust. Mollify. Verb. To calm someone who is angry or upset. She tried to mollify the neighbor by offering to pay for the broken fence panel and bringing over a pie still warm from the oven. Ameliorate. Verb. To make a bad situation better. To ameliorate the backlog, they simplified the form, added clear examples, and staffed the help desk during the hours when most mistakes happened. Revere. Verb. To feel deep respect for something or someone. She came to revere the old professor not for his reputation, but for the way he listened to uncertain students and treated their questions like worthy work. Abeyance. Noun. A temporary pause, something left inactive for now. The repair plan stayed in abeyance until spring, when the river ran low enough to ford. Prudent. Adjective. Careful and sensible about avoiding needless risk. It was prudent to test the ice with a stick before letting the dog run ahead across the pond. Precursor. Noun. Something earlier that hints at what follows. Thick, still air was the precursor to the storm that broke before midnight. Insidious. Adjective. Harmful in a way that spreads gradually and is hard to notice at first. The insidious leak behind the pantry wall warped the floorboards for months before anyone traced the musty smell to a cracked pipe above the wiring. Tenacious. Adjective. Holding fast, stubbornly persistent. The ivy was tenacious, rooting in every crack until the old wall wore a sleeve of green. Burgeon. Verb. To grow or increase quickly. Weeds began to burgeon beside the shed once the rains returned. Exalt. Verb. To praise someone or something highly. The review did not exalt the novel as flawless, but it lingered on one chapter set in winter light, where every sentence seemed carved from cold air. Steadfast. Adjective. Firm and dependable in purpose or loyalty. Through weeks of criticism, he remained steadfast, listening carefully, adjusting what made sense, and refusing to abandon the core promise to users. Myriad. Noun. An immense variety or number. A myriad of fireflies lifted from the meadow, each blink a small lantern in the humid dark. Reassess. Verb. To judge again with new facts. After the sprain healed, he reassessed whether he should keep running on pavement. Onset. Noun. The beginning of something, often sudden. At the onset of flu season, the clinic posted hours on the door. Warrant. Verb. To justify or call for. The smoke did not warrant panic, but it did warrant opening every window. Headstrong. Adjective. Stubbornly self-willed and hard to guide. The headstrong colt kept pulling toward the gate, and the trainer responded with patient circles until the animal finally chose calm over stubborn momentum. Constrain. Verb. To limit what someone or something can do. The small venue constrained the staging options, so the director leaned into intimate lighting and a tighter set design. Capricious. Adjective. Changing quickly and unpredictably. Spring weather was capricious, bright sun at breakfast and sleet by noon, so the hikers packed layers and learned to laugh at the shifting sky. Suffice. Verb. To be enough. A jacket will suffice for the walk. The rain is only a drizzle. Solicit. Verb. To ask formally for help, money, or information. The choir went door to door to solicit donations for new songbooks before the winter concert. Rectitude. Noun. Strong honesty in how you act. Voters trusted her rectitude when she explained where the money went. Diffident. Adjective. Shy and unsure about speaking up. Diffident in crowds, he still offered a clear map when hikers looked lost at the fork. Cursory. Adjective. Done quickly and without much attention to detail. A cursory glance at the field guide led him to misread the plant, and only later, studying the vein pattern, did he realize his mistake. Imminent. Adjective. Likely to happen very soon. With lightning imminent over the prairie, they lowered the tent poles, counted seconds between flash and thunder, and debated whether to wait it out or run for the car. Sinecure. Noun. A job that pays but requires little work. He joked that the appointment sounded like a sinecure, but the quiet title hid long hours of correspondence and careful diplomacy with difficult donors. Intractable. Adjective. Hard to control, change, or solve. The dispute seemed intractable until both sides agreed to define one measurable goal for the month and stop arguing about everything else at once. Somber. Adjective. Dark or serious in mood. The coastal light turned somber before the squall, sea and sky the same iron gray, gulls wheeling in silence. Concur. Verb. To agree with someone's view or decision. Studying the tide chart together, they concurred low water would leave the causeway passable just after sunrise.